You ever notice that every year the government gets bigger, the budget gets bigger, the debt gets bigger, and somehow your paycheck gets smaller?
Maybe this is just a coincidence.
Sure, and maybe my lawnmower identifies as a helicopter. Today on Waffle Ladders, we're climbing the ladder of 10 ways critics say America is moving towards socialism, and why that's a really bad idea.
This should be completely non-controversial.
Absolutely. Nothing calms the internet down like politics. Let's climb the ladder. Number 10, government spending keeps exploding. When I was young, $8 trillion sounded like science fiction. Now politicians spend trillions so often, they say it the way normal people order a latte at Starbucks.
Government has a lot of responsibilities.
True, but every year the federal government takes on more programs, more spending, and more debt. At some point you have to ask, when does helping become controlling and/or self-enrichment? And in socialism, the system solely exists to enrich the decision makers. Number 9, more Americans depend on government programs. Government assistance programs have expanded dramatically over the decades. Healthcare, housing, food assistance, student aid, income support. This chart is disturbing. We just can't sustain this many people on the train, while less and less people pull the train.
Those programs help people.
Sometimes they absolutely do. The concern is what happens when more and more people become dependent on government for their basic needs. Eventually the government isn't just regulating your life, it's completely funding it. And that is incompatible with democracy and rugged independence that the US was built on. Number 8, the middle class is shrinking. For decades, the middle class has been the backbone of this country. Unfortunately, it is a survival of the fittest. Produce at the lowest price while maintaining quality, and you will win the market. Instead, we increasingly see government subsidies, tax credits, and incentives steering entire industries. Solar power, electric vehicles, wind power, they can't exist without massive subsidies. That's not to say these industries don't have value, although most of them probably don't, and are just schemes to enrich those pushing them. And these areas have received an unfair hand up compared to similar unfavored technologies.
So Tesla wouldn't be as big?
Not even close, as massive tax incentives gave them a huge sales boost. The more government decides where money goes, the less markets decide, and that rarely works out for the taxpayer or the little guy. And as the divide between the rich and the middle class expands, the less stable the country becomes. Number 7, education is being centralized and politicized. Once upon a time, local school boards handled education. Now federal agencies and national standards dictate curriculum from the top down.
Isn't that just to ensure a baseline quality?
It's to ensure a baseline thought. When federal funding is tied to specific political ideologies rather than core academic outcomes, schools stop being places of critical inquiry and start being training grounds for state-approved worldviews, which are almost always a left-leaning worldview. That's a classic hallmark of central planning, controlling the narrative of the next generation. And if that narrative is leftist in nature, then socialism can become normalized. Number 6, the regulatory state keeps growing. Congress passes a law, then agencies create thousands of pages of regulations. Then lawyers spend 20 years arguing about what it means.
That sounds inefficient.
That's because it is. Think about this. There are 185,000 pages of active federal regulations currently on the books. This is known as a CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. Then there were 106,000 pages of new regulatory activity published in 2024. For context, the entire Bible is just about 1,200 pages. The CFR is roughly the equivalent of 150 Bibles worth of rules. And that's before you account for the guidance documents, the agency memos, and other regulatory dark matters. That carries real legal weight, but doesn't show up in official page counts. If you don't think all this bureaucracy cripples the growth of the United States, then you are living a fairy tale. Number 5, healthcare is becoming more government directed. Healthcare used to be mostly private. Now government programs, mandates, subsidies, regulations, and reimbursement systems influence huge portions of the industry. This leads to doctors being confused and gun-shy to treat patients.
Healthcare is complicated.
Yes, and more expensive. That is largely due to the huge growth in administrative positions. And why do we need all these positions? Added complexity in the system. Take the Obamacare bill, 906 pages. It implemented the ICD-10 codes. This is where they took the ICD-9 18,000 codes and replaced them with 188,000 codes in the ICD-10. By the way, ICD stands for International Classification Directory. Do you really think a system can add that much and not cause bloat? Yeah, me either. Number 4, the national debt no longer seems real. The national debt is so large that most people stop trying to understand it.
Why? How large is it now?
Around $40 trillion. Now humans can't comprehend that, so they think of it this way. If I gave you $100 a minute, it would take about a week to give you $1 million. $1 billion? It would take 19 years. $1 trillion? Well, that would take me 19,000 years. And that 40 trillion doesn't count unfunded liabilities like pensions, Social Security, and Medicare growth. So when you keep borrowing on your credit card, that endless borrowing allows government expansion without immediately showing taxpayers the true cost. Hey Tanner, can you hand me the federal credit card? Yeah. Wow, what's the spending limit?
There isn't one.
Yeah, who pays the bill?
Mostly people who haven't been born yet.
Yes, the ultimate buy now, pay never plan.
So it's a credit card.
A credit card with no spending limit and several hundred million authorized users. Number 3, more decisions are being centralized. Local control used to be the bedrock of the republic. Schools, communities, and businesses were managed by the people living in them. Now we see a massive shift where federal agencies and national programs dictate the rules from thousands of miles away.
But doesn't that create a more uniform standard for everyone?
Standards are fine, but one size doesn't fit all, and uniformity often comes at the cost of accountability. When power is centralized in DC, local officials lose their agency, and the government becomes a faceless bureaucracy that is less responsive to the unique needs of individual communities. If a local policy fails, you can vote those people out. If a federal mandate fails, you're likely just stuck with it. Number 2, government keeps expanding during crises. Here's a pattern. A crisis happens, government gets new powers, new spending, new programs, new authority.
Then what?
The crisis eventually ends. The government expansion almost never does. An example was the institutionalized behavioral governance during the COVID-19 pandemic. Federal agencies like the CDC, HHS, and CISA integrated behavioral science and data analytics with big tech platforms to influence public behavior and compliance. This was a stay at home, keep 6 feet apart, get the jab. All these orders were used to control.
I still see those 6 feet apart signs.
Yeah. Then there were the agricultural policy shifts. In the 1970s, agricultural policy was fundamentally reoriented to maximize production of commodity crops like corn and soybeans. This shift was framed around efficiency and abundance, but it created a permanent system of subsidies that continue to this day, and government price support that fundamentally reshaped the American food system, incentivizing the production of calorie-dense, highly processed foods that persist to this day. And that is not good for Americans. Programs created during emergencies have a strange habit of becoming permanent. Number 1, the definition of government's role keeps changing. This is the big one. America was founded on the idea that government had limited responsibilities as codified in the Constitution. Protect rights, provide security, maintain order. And the Constitution specifically says powers not mentioned are reserved for the states. Today, many people expect the federal government to provide solutions for healthcare, education, housing, retirement, student debt, energy, childcare, income support, and much, much more.
So what's the concern?
The more problems government is expected to solve, the more power government must have to solve them. And history shows that power rarely shrinks voluntarily. Well, there you have it.
So are we becoming a socialist country?
It depends on who you ask. Some people think these policies are necessary and compassionate. Others think they're moving us toward bigger government, less individual responsibility, and less economic freedom.
So the argument isn't really about socialism.
Well, it is and it isn't. The most important aspect is how much power government should have over society. And that's a debate Americans have been having since the beginning. So what do you think? Is the government getting too large? How do you see government encroaching on your life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell. And as always, keep climbing.
And in the morning, I'm making waffles.